Welcome to The Quiet Truth, where lay Catholics confront the untruths of the pro-life establishment. I'm Tom Borek with episode 22, Pro-Life Lies. Last time, we focused on some university professors who teach that there's no such thing as objective truth. Today, we're going to look and see how the habit of compromising with the truth is undermining and threatens to destroy the pro-life movement in the United States. The abortion conflict is a battle for the hearts and minds of a nation. The pro-abortion, pro-choice people, they teach that a woman has an absolute right to destroy her unborn child without regard to the rights or dignity of the child, based solely on what's best for her, the mother. Its goal is to create a society where people who disagree with that are shunned as mean, rude, and especially inappropriately judgmental. The anti-abortion or pro-life movement, on the other hand, teaches that destroying an innocent human life is just as wrong when it is small and cradled in the womb as it is when the person is fully grown. Its goal is to create a society in which abortion is both illegal and socially unacceptable. Unfortunately, for many who identify as pro-life, the teaching has eroded and the goal has changed. Let's look at how these two groups make their case to pregnant women in South Bend in St. Joseph County, Indiana. Let's begin with the pro-abortion, pro-choice group. If you Google abortion South Bend, Indiana, you'll get this list. The top option is Abortion South Bend New Women's Care Center. Click on the link and you get the center's homepage, which looks like this. It's pink, so you know it's a special place for women. It says, "Pregnant. We're here to help." It also says, quote, "Our counselors will give you the information you need about pregnancy, abortion, and your options, so you can make decisions that are right for you." That's the whole pro-choice approach in a nutshell. There's no need to consider the rights or your responsibilities toward the fetus. There are no moral questions. There's only what's right for you. Click on abortion and you will see the abortion things to consider page. It says, if you're considering abortion, we offer free confidential services to help you find out the facts and make the plan that is best for you. Let's go back to the homepage. If you click here, you will see and hear this earnest young therapist say, among other things, that an unexpected pregnancy can be stressful and frightening. No one here will pressure you or judge you. This is especially important if you are considering abortion. Note that this is really a very kind of polite way of saying that anyone who questions the morality of your decision is inappropriately mean and judgmental and ought to be shunned. The therapist also says, an ultrasound will also tell you how many weeks pregnant you are, which determines the types of abortion procedures available to you. If you don't have a viable pregnancy, there is no need for an abortion. And of course, the implication is that if you do have a viable pregnancy, you may have a need for abortion. In a letter published in the South Bend Tribune, one of the center's counselors explained that the center's mission is, quote, solely to inform and educate clients as to the options they have, including information on abortion if that is what they are seeking or considering. Clients are presented with truthful and accurate information about abortion procedures and potential risks. They are told that it is important to be educated about their choices so that they can make a fully informed decision. So the counseling tells them everything about this decision except the moral aspect. So they know all about the costs and benefits except whether it's the right thing to do or not, and whether it affects whether it's appropriate thing to do to an unborn child. Once morality is out of the picture, the only criteria that are left are those that relate to the comfort, convenience, and preferences of the mother. If the client respects and likes the counselor, she'll be persuaded and will move toward the pro-choice position. And it doesn't really even matter whether the woman decides to give birth to the child in her womb at that time. Because you see, the pro-choice team chalks up a win every time it persuades a woman that she has the option of aborting her child without guilt. If all, or virtually all mothers come to believe this, then the struggle over abortion will be over and the abortion fans will have won. About 4 years ago, I was standing outside the abortion clinic in South Bend, Indiana, with a group of people that were engaged in what I call sidewalk counseling. They would approach the women as they would walk in to get into the abortion clinic, and they'd ask them whether they felt forced into having an abortion. And if the woman said, yes, I feel forced by whatever circumstance, they would try to explain how their pro-life organization could help them with that particular problem. At one point, 4 or 5 counselors from the Women's Care Center came walking by on their way to a meeting in the building next door, and they observed what was happening, and they began shouting at the sidewalk counselors and saying that they had no business trying to persuade women not to abort their children once they had made the abortion decision. They said that the counselors were being rude and mean and inappropriately judgmental. They were really brave and articulate on behalf of the pro-choice position, and I had no doubt that they're fiercely supportive of their clients and that they persuade many, many, many women to move toward the pro-choice camp. They're terrific assets for that point of view. Now, as you might expect, this Women's Care Center operation has been extremely successful, both in terms of financial success and in terms of growth. It claims to be the largest pregnancy resource center in the United States, and I have no reason to doubt them. It's got at least 31 locations in 10 states. But more important than the number of locations or the number of states it covers, is the fact that it exposes every year 30,000 vulnerable, receptive women to its ongoing one-on-one pro-choice counseling. Consider the impact of that fact. It's not as if a pro-choice organization is getting 30,000 hits a year on its website. It's not even as if they're able to get 30,000 women to sit down and listen to a 3-minute talk on why pro-choice is the way to go. This is 30,000 women who repeatedly hear the pro-choice message from someone whose job it is to become a trusted, emotionally supportive authority figure who can provide valuable services free of charge for them. Consider the significance of that for South Bend's St. Joseph County, where at least every other child born is born to one of the center's current clients. And these new mothers who get this message, they don't keep quiet about it either. They tell their friends and their associates. In fact, the center primarily receives its client flow from word of mouth, either directly or indirectly from its prior clients. All in all, it's hard to imagine a more effective way to promote the pro-choice ideas and the pro-choice agenda in the community than what's done by the Women's Care Center. Now, before we look at the pro-life community's response to this in St. Joe County and in South Bend, let's think about what the best response might be. You know, frankly, after reviewing the facts of how the Women's Care Center operates, I begin to think that there ought to be a pro-life pregnancy support center. I think that pro-lifers would donate generously to such a facility. And it too could have ultrasounds, and it could have caring, knowledgeable counselors who would treat the women very well. It could provide lots of free services. It just would be pro-life because the counselors wouldn't say that they support the pro-choice agenda. They wouldn't do pro-choice advertising, and they wouldn't do pro-choice counseling. When asked for their personal opinion about abortion, or about the center's opinion about abortion, each pro-life center employee would reply mildly with something like, we oppose the killing of innocent human life, including the life of the unborn. And whenever asked to help a woman make a difficult decision about whether or not to abort their child, the pro-life center counselors would always include in the equation the rights and dignity of the unborn child. No need to be harsh, treat everyone well, but at the same time, let everyone know that the free services offered by the center are provided by the generous donations of people who believe in the rights of the unborn. With that in mind, let's see what the actual pro-life team is doing in South Bend. If you Google pro-life South Bend, you get this list, and the first listing is Right to Life Michiana. Now, for those of you who don't know, Michiana is a region that consists of southern Michigan and the very northern part of Indiana, and it also includes St. Joseph County and South Bend. And Right to Life Michiana is an organization that covers that region, and it's affiliated with Right to Life Indiana, the state organization, and the National Right to Life organization, which is the largest pro-life anti-abortion advocacy group in the United States. So click on the link and you'll see this page. And notice there's a button for pregnancy, need help? And if you click on that button, well, then you'll see this page, which refers you to the Women's Care Center. Yes, the very same Women's Care Center with the caring counselors who want you to do what's right for you. The very same Women's Care Center that you get by Googling abortion South Bend. And the Right to Life page even says, Women's Care Center offers a variety of services to meet your needs so you can make the decisions that are right for you. The decisions that are right for you. That's code for whatever decisions appeal to you the most. And it's the opposite of the decisions that are right. So, yes, the biggest secular pro-life organization in Michiana, in the region, has teamed up with the Women's Care Center to give pregnant women a pro-abortion, pro-choice message. Imagine the impact of that on a pregnant woman tempted to abort. Let's say she's terrified that this unplanned pregnancy is going to make her a single mother and is going to disadvantage her in 1,000 ways. But at the same time, she's conflicted because she feels like that maybe taking this action is immoral. Maybe it's really wrong to destroy the life that is growing within her. So because on some level she really wants to do the right thing, instead of going to the Women's Care Center or going to an abortion provider, she goes to the Right to Life organization to get some guidance. And she goes to the homepage and they refer her to the pro-choice organization where she can go and get pro-choice counseling, and where the counselors can tell her that the only thing that matters is what's right for her. So if she thinks her life is better without the child, she can do that guilt-free. Thank you very much. This could easily be, as you can imagine, the straw that breaks the back of the woman's conscience, and that allows her to make this decision and to believe, perhaps for a while, that she can abort her child guilt-free. So the Women's Care Center receives referrals from at least one pro-life group, but the center receives a much more significant benefit from the pro-life community. Its primary source of funding is devout Catholic donors who believe they are contributing to an organization that is pushing back against abortion. The center operates two websites, one pro-choice and one pro-life. You've already seen the pro-choice website. That's womenscarecenter.org, where the friendly counselors will explain to you why you can do whatever you want that's right for you. The second site is supportwomenscarecenter.org, and it has a distinctively pro-life flavor because it's designed to solicit money from opponents of abortion. So it describes the center as a pro-life organization with a pro-life agenda. For example, it tells donors that it knows what, quote, being pro-life means, unquote. And it honors those who donate $1,000 with the title Life Partner, and those who contribute $2,500 as Life Leader. It says that its, quote, mission is to help pregnant women from our communities choose life for their babies, unquote. Of course, it targets pro-life donors because they are more generous than pro-choice donors, because they feel so strongly about the anti-abortion issue. So now we know why there is no pro-life pregnancy resource center in South Bend or in St. Joseph County. It's because all the pro-life money went to the Women's Care Center. The Women's Care Center also receives a great deal of support from the bishops of the One True Church. For example, Bishop Kevin Rhodes, the strongly pro-life bishop of the Diocese of Fort Wayne, South Bend, serves on the governing board of the local center facility, permits his name to be used on the donor's website and his title. He also permits the center to solicit funds in parish bulletins, and he gives the center a prominent place in his annual recommendations for diocesan giving. More important even than that, though, he has granted the Women's Care Center in South Bend the extraordinary privilege of housing a Eucharistic Adoration Chapel on its premises. As a result, for years now, mortal sin has been regularly, deliberately, and systematically condoned in a facility that houses our Eucharistic Lord. This is blasphemy. This is a stain on the reputation of the Church. And this is an insult to Almighty God. Consider the grave violations of God's commandments. Each time a counselor who knows that abortion is homicide pretends to be pro-choice, she is lying in violation of the 8th commandment. And each person who supports or directs the center in its work is complicit in that lie and complicit in that violation of the 8th commandment. Any center counselor who encourages a client to believe that abortion is a morally acceptable option is guilty of encouraging murder in violation of the 5th commandment. And when a woman chooses abortion after receiving such counseling, then the counselor, the center, and all of its supporters are complicit in the murder of that child, and also violate that fifth commandment. The center is not only complicit in the murder of unborn children by women who choose abortion immediately after receiving counseling. It's also guilty of adding its many and varied voices to the voices already pushing our society toward a pro-abortion, pro-choice point of view. They are guilty of shrinking the size of the pro-life team and increasing the size of the pro-abortion group. And they bear an enormous amount of guilt for those consequences as well. Now, Catholics who support the Church's involvement with the center are complicit in all the sins that I was just talking about, and they blaspheme, and they undercut the Church's message about the sanctity of life, and they encourage the belief that the Church is untruthful in violation of both the first and the second commandments. A few years ago, I found myself in a meeting with Bishop Rhodes and a few Chancery employees and some pro-life advocates. And someone asked the bishop why he would lend his support to an organization that publicly advocates abortion as a legitimate choice for pregnant women. His Excellency thought for a moment and then said, "Oh yes, they've explained all that. They just pretend to be pro-choice so they can save more babies." And then we moved on to other business. Since then, I've learned more about the argument. Here's how it goes. They pretend to be pro-life in order to attract lots of women who are planning to abort their children. Then they counsel them that they have every right, every moral right, to abort their child for any reason or for no reason at all. This relaxes the clients and makes them receptive. So then when the client shows them the ultrasound pictures of their infants, they see that the fetus looks like a cute baby that they might want to cuddle. And they're moved toward the idea that they might want to give birth to that child. And then the center seals the deal by offering a lot of free and low-cost services that make childbirth seem both less frightening and less expensive. Although this activity requires lying, it saves thousands of babies. The ends justify the means. I'd like to address all of those who have accepted this argument as justification for the center's pro-choice activities, and especially His Excellency Bishop Kevin Rhodes. Your Excellency, please open your mind to the possibility that this argument is wrong, morally, logically, and factually. You have nothing to lose, and many souls and many lives to gain. So please clear your head and consider first the fact that the argument is immoral on its face. It's an ends justify the means argument. And those arguments are always, or nearly always, rationalizations for sin. In this case, it's a rationalization for mortal sin, committed by dozens of people every year, hundreds of times. Sin, of course, is offensive to God and contrary to His will. And each time we deliberately commit a sin with the idea that we are going to achieve some greater good, we are substituting our will for God's will. We have decided that God is wrong about the sin and that we are right. And to that extent, whenever we do that, we demonstrate that we have lost our faith in God. Second, Consider the fact that the argument is simply absurd on its face. In its most basic form, it says that we can best end abortion by telling everybody that it's okay, by spreading the word that it's morally acceptable. It's backwards. You don't cool a room by starting a fire, and you don't teach your kids to tell the truth by ordering them to lie. Consider, third, the fact that, like many rationalizations for sin, it's too good to be true. Now, anyone who's tried to teach pro-life truths to pro-choicers know that it's a difficult task, requiring mastery of the arguments and a lot of endurance and a willingness to accept disagreement, hostility, and failure. The Women's Care Center idea that you can simply tell the women what they want to hear about abortion and then show them some pictures and then thousands of them will suddenly become pro-life is it's like magic. It's too good to be true. Fourth, consider the fact that in terms of the battle for the minds and hearts of a nation over abortion, the center's activities are entirely pro-choice. They have no pro-life impact whatsoever. They advertise pro-choice, they counsel pro-choice, they teach and they convince women that they have the right to abort their child without guilt. At the same time, sure, the ultrasounds and the services that they provide make childbirth seem easier, less expensive, and less frightening. But the center reaches the conclusion that every time they persuade somebody that might be nice to have the baby and not to exercise their right to abort the child, that every time they do that, that mother has chosen life. She's undergone a pro-life conversion. But that's not true at all. What the center actually produces is not pro-life mothers, but pro-choice women with babies. Consider the fact that, fifth, with minimal changes, the center could suddenly become a powerful pro-life organization instead of being a powerful force for the pro-abortion position. Each year, 30,000 women would find out that their favorite professional, authoritative, supportive, generous counselor was unapologetically and bravely pro-life. And each year, those 30,000 women and a number of their friends and relatives and acquaintances would become aware that generous, free services were being donated to women with unplanned pregnancies by the generous support of the pro-life community. This truthful information would make a powerful, ongoing statement that would push people in the pro-life direction. And it would do it without conflict, without finger-pointing, with nothing but loving concern behind it. Now, nonetheless, if you ask the Women's Care Center to make these changes and turn away from moral sin, they will be adamantly opposed to that. One reason for that is that they are convinced of an obvious lie. The lie is that you cannot possibly provide charitable assistance to women with unplanned pregnancies without lying to them about your position about abortion. They also brag that their pro-choice counseling is especially Christian, lovingly Christian, and super professional. In fact, this kind of counseling, it's unchristian, it's unprofessional, and it's cowardly surrender to the secular culture. The center claims that by not judging abortion, abortionists, or the women who who hire them that they are following Christ's admonition to judge not, lest ye be judged. Your Excellency, you know better than I do that scriptural passage tells us not to judge the holiness or the sinfulness of other people's souls, but it does not tell us not to condemn sin. We are obliged to condemn sin. One of the spiritual works of mercy is to admonish the sinner. And we absolutely may not condone sin by our words, by our actions, or by our silence. Easy on the sinner, hard on the sin. See Quiet Truth number 7. The center claims that its pro-choice counseling is especially professional because it is an instance of something called non-judgmental listening or non-judgmental counseling. They are wrong for 2 reasons. First, because non-judgmental counseling does not require that one pretend to approve of harmful behavior, even harmful behavior of the client. It is possible to provide high-quality, professional, non-judgmental counseling to murderers, rapists, child abusers, and abortionists without condoning sin or pretending to approve of those people's behavior. And second, pro-choice counseling, approving of abortion, taking the position that abortion is just fine, there's no moral issue with it, is in itself a judgment about behavior. And in some instances, it's a judgment about the client's behavior. If the client is inclined toward abortion and you're saying, yeah, you're right to do that, then it's a positive judgment about the client's behavior. It is, of course, also a negative judgment about the behavior of everyone who objects to the morality of abortion. In other words, to the teaching, anyone who accepts the teachings of the one true church or who otherwise is opposed to abortion. It feeds the stereotype that people who are opposed to abortion are mean and judgmental and inappropriate, and that nobody can get along with them. If the client herself is conflicted about the morality of abortion, then the pro-choice counseling that she receives tells her that her moral concerns are unimportant and that she ought not to have them and that she ought not to express them. And that is the essence of being judgmental during the counseling. I've used non-judgmental counseling any number of times in my work, and I've taught it for decades to professionals and to graduate students. And it comes in 2 parts. First, there's the pure listening stage or part, and second, there's the helping or therapeutic stage. Now, during the pure listening part, it is important to filter out judgments by the counselor. The counselor shouldn't make judgments, positive or negative, and shouldn't pollute the interaction with his or her thoughts at all. It's just pure one-way communication from the client, and the counselor accepts all that information and learns it and learns to express it in a way that the client can see is a very thorough, deep understanding without the counselor getting involved in arguing or judging or any of those kinds of behaviors. And this positive listening experience becomes a terrific foundation for the counseling relationship going forward. See the Quiet Truth number 8 for more details. But because the center believes that approving of abortion is somehow not a judgment, positive or negative, they pollute the listening stage in the counseling with all these pro-choice messages, which are either positive, encouraging the client to believe that abortion is a good thing, or suppressing her understanding that there might be some moral issues involved, judgmental. Now, during the helping stage, still without arguing or being inappropriately judgmental of the client, the counselor can begin to inject her ideas and thoughts and other facts that might not have occurred to the client otherwise. Now, the center does that, but they distort it again, because when they're going through with the client the pros and cons of the abortion, they deal with all the pros and cons except those that have to do with the rights and the dignity of the unborn. It's all about what's best for the mother. Imagine a situation where you have a client whose main concern about, she sees the downside of giving birth as putting off her graduation date and delaying her education. And she sees the main downside of having the abortion as being the guilt that she might feel going forward, the feeling of wrongness about taking the life of her unborn child. If you have pro-choice counseling, she's encouraged to just look at it in terms of, the pluses and minuses. What's it going to do to her education, her career, her the kind of life that she wants to have, and ignoring the guilt issue. And I can hardly imagine a more inappropriate and unprofessional counseling than that. So, in conclusion, compromising with the truth and condoning mortal sin create a slippery slope into a pool of moral and intellectual quicksand. The only winning move is not to play. If you follow the quiet truth at all, you already know that our society is dominated by a culture of death that constantly bombards us with foolish and evil messages. And now you've seen how such messages have undermined the pro-life movement and threatened to destroy it. They are more infectious and more deadly than any disease. Be careful out there. Thank you for your kind attention.